3 minutes ago, the silence shattered, and with it the fragile balance the royal family had been desperately trying to preserve. Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, usually the embodiment of restraint, diplomacy, and old-world royal discretion, stepped beyond every boundary that had defined her public life.
How the incriminating item
Her
ended
voice,
up in her glove box.
steady yet trembling with a
And
force no one could
desperation.
ignore, cut through a room filled with polished smiles and calculated politeness. She accused Queen Camilla of deliberately attempting to sabotage Princess Catherine's overseas tour, a claim so explosive, so utterly unthinkable, that even the most seasoned courtiers froze
For years,
in disbelief.
Charles had faced
Before we go
crises
deeper
with
into
the
what
calm
this
of a
really
man.
means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. What Sophie revealed didn't just ripple through the corridors
He
of
had
Buckingham
endured
Palace,
scandals,
it detonated,
insults,
leaving everyone scrambling to understand how such allegations could surface with such precision, such timing, and such undeniable emotional
that she had no
weight.
idea.
And yet, beneath the shock, beneath the frantic whispers and panicked glances, there was an unsettling truth. This was not born in an
No
instant.
excuses,
It was
no
the eruption of
deflections.
something long brewing
Every
beneath
attempt
the
Camilla
gilded
made to
facade.
explain.
Sophie's reputation has always been her armor. For decades, she has navigated the monarchy with a quiet strength, choosing calm over conflict and diplomacy over drama. For someone like her to break ranks this publicly, this dramatically, suggests a pressure so immense that even she could no longer contain it. Witnesses at the charity summit swear they saw something different in her eyes, something raw, something wounded, something that hinted not at political maneuvering, but at personal conviction. Her voice, though controlled, carried the weight of suppressed frustration, and perhaps even fear, revealing cracks in the carefully curated unity the monarchy projects. Those who were present claim she spoke as if a burden had been lifted and a line had finally been crossed. The revelation came during what should have been a routine closed-door event, an intimate gathering where the royals typically shine in their element, smiling, listening, engaging in soft diplomacy. But this time, the atmosphere turned electric as Sophie veered away from expected platitudes and instead delivered a statement laced with accusation. She referenced coordinated obstructions placed against Catherine's meticulously planned tour itinerary, a phrase that instantly shifted the room's energy. You could almost feel the oxygen being pulled away as attendees tried to digest the magnitude of what had just been said. This wasn't a vague reference or a subtle hint. It was a direct allegation, strategically phrased, delivered with perfect clarity. In the moments that followed, chaos simmered just beneath the surface. Aides exchanged uneasy glances, some retreating toward the exits, as if avoiding being implicated by proximity. A few left, abruptly, their hurried footsteps echoing down the marble corridor, while others froze in place, too stunned to move. There were those who tried to smooth over the disruption with polite laughter, pretending they had misheard, while others immediately reached for their phones, their instincts trained toward damage control. Sophie had thrown the first stone, and every person in that room understood that nothing about the royal narrative would remain untouched. Even more unsettling was the timing, 3 minutes, precisely 3 minutes before a scheduled public appearance. The countdown to cameras, reporters, and live coverage had nearly reached zero when Sophie spoke. It wasn't accidental, it wasn't impulsive, it was deliberate. By speaking at that exact moment, she ensured that her words could not be dismissed, buried, or reshaped before the world inevitably caught wind of them. The palace spin machine had no warning, no buffer, no chance to intercept the impact. And for someone, like Sophie, calculated, perceptive, deeply aware of public optics, timing that precise was no coincidence. Her tone, according to multiple attendees, hovered between fury and heartbreak. Not loud, not dramatic, but weighted with a personal truth that made it impossible to ignore. It was as if months of restrained frustration had finally found their outlet, and in that release, she shattered the illusion that everything behind palace walls was harmonious. Her words carried the force of someone who had witnessed too much, endured too much, and realized that silence had become a luxury she could no longer afford. But what could have provoked such a sudden betrayal of silence from Sophie, and why now, after years of royal loyalty? Beneath the flawless public image, Catherine has been waging a quiet war. Sources close to Kensington Palace speak of last-minute cancellations, retracted invitations, and whispered warnings about stepping on royal toes. Her highly anticipated solo, Commonwealth tour was meant to be a triumph. Instead, it's become a battlefield. And the enemy, it seems, was inside the palace walls all along. In the early stages, Catherine's tour was heralded as a defining moment, the beginning of her evolution from ceremonial royal into a commanding diplomatic figure on the world stage. The itinerary was bold, crossing continents and symbolizing a reinvigoration of ties that had weakened in recent years. Commonwealth leaders expressed enthusiasm, with several high-profile stops set to spotlight education, sustainability, and women's health issues close to Catherine's heart. Internally, aides described a rare air of optimism, a feeling that, for once, the palace was ahead of the narrative. But that momentum began to buckle, and quietly, almost untraceably, the cracks began to appear. Key Commonwealth nations began withdrawing their participation, citing vague scheduling conflicts and logistical challenges. But those excuses rang hollow to insiders who had worked tirelessly to secure those engagements. The withdrawals came in a specific pattern, always just days before final confirmation, always targeting the most symbolically significant appearances. One by one, the core pieces of Catherine's diplomatic puzzle began to fall away. At first, Kensington believed it was bad luck or shifting politics, but behind closed doors, concern mounted that something more deliberate was unfolding. Catherine, ever composed in public, grew increasingly restless in private. Advisors who once had daily access to her began to face unexplained delays. Briefings arrived late, if at all. Private meetings were rescheduled without notice. Royal courtiers close to the planning described a slow freeze around Catherine's orbit, one that didn't originate from within her team, but from higher up. Messages requesting clarity from certain departments went unanswered. At least 2 senior aides confided in friends that they were being squeezed out from critical decisions without explanation. The more Catherine pushed forward, the more resistance she seemed to face, not from foreign governments, but from the machinery of her own institution. The emotional toll became impossible to hide. Those close to Catherine reported sleepless nights, weight loss, and visible distress traits, deeply uncharacteristic of the woman known for her iron composure. She kept smiling in public, as was expected of her. But the private tears were real. Her resolve hadn't weakened, but the realization that she was being undermined from within shook her deeply. She had expected challenges abroad, not sabotage from her own royal household. The isolation grew, and with it, the unspoken question: who was pulling the strings behind the collapse of something that had once held such promise? It was during this period of quiet unraveling that Catherine reportedly turned to Sophie, not with accusations, not with outrage, but with quiet honesty. A late-night call, a brief meeting over tea, a single sentence laced with heartbreak. Someone doesn't want this to happen. In that moment, Sophie understood not only the gravity of what Catherine was facing, but the fact that Catherine herself didn't yet know who to trust. It was that private confession, raw and vulnerable, that planted the seed. Sophie would carry it with her, turning it over in her mind again and again until the day came when silence could no longer protect anyone. But what exactly did Camilla do to turn Catherine's dreams into diplomatic dust, and why did Sophie finally name her? The allegations aren't vague, they're surgical. Leaked memos, intercepted calls, and an anonymous dossier paint a disturbing picture of manipulation. Camilla, it's claimed, didn't merely oppose Catherine's tour, she orchestrated its collapse from the shadows. Each cancellation, each diplomatic snub, traces back to a single, unmistakable source: Clarence House. As the puzzle pieces began to shift into place, those once skeptical could no longer deny the pattern. The tour briefing interference memo was the first blow buried in a stack of internal documents, marked as routine. But one line stood out: an instruction to redirect diplomatic engagement efforts away from the Duchess of Cambridge's initiatives and refocus instead on established senior representatives. That single sentence, cloaked in bureaucratic neutrality, effectively stripped Catherine's tour of institutional support. The memo was not signed by Camilla, but the chain of command led directly back to her private office. Royal insiders say it bore the signature language of a system accustomed to quiet power plays, subtle, deniable, and deeply effective. Then came the couriers. Royal dispatchers, trained to operate with clockwork precision, began to notice peculiar changes. Carefully prepared diplomatic packets meant for foreign embassies, schedules, letters, gifts, were suddenly withheld, redirected, or quietly cancelled. These were the very materials that finalize high-level meetings, and without them, everything crumbled. Some of these couriers later confided in colleagues that they were instructed not to ask questions. One, anonymously quoted in a damning report, claimed he was told to delay indefinitely and destroy if necessary. The quiet sabotage was happening not in the spotlight, but in the hallways behind the throne. The most damning evidence, however, was a voice note. Leaked by an unknown insider, the audio recording captured a senior aide in Camilla's team, describing Catherine's proposed tour as unnecessary and overreaching. The aide spoke of nipping things in the bud and made cryptic references to avoiding another Diana scenario. Though the identity of the speaker was never confirmed publicly, those familiar with Camilla's inner circle recognized the voice immediately. The royal household refused to comment, but the damage was already done. The public began to ask questions no press secretary could answer. But this was no isolated whisper campaign, it was a full-scale diplomatic redirection. Private messages were reportedly sent to Commonwealth envoys, subtly discouraging their participation in Catherine's tour events. These communications were never formally logged, but their content was unmistakably political. Phrases like, "timing may not be ideal," and "alternative priorities have emerged," hinted at a coordinated effort to shift attention away from the Duchess of Cambridge's initiatives. Several officials later admitted they felt pressured not to engage too closely with her itinerary, fearing it could create friction within the royal ranks. That friction, as it turns out, had already ignited behind closed doors. At the center of it all was fear. Camilla, despite having been crowned queen, found herself increasingly overshadowed by Catherine's problemandea, grace, youth, and growing influence. The public's adoration of Catherine didn't just unsettle her, it threatened her. Palace aides described Camilla's anxiety as intensifying after every public poll that ranked Catherine as the most admired royal. That admiration, unearned by bloodline, was dangerously powerful. To Camilla, it wasn't just about prestige, it was about survival. In a monarchy that runs on perception, visibility is power, and Catherine's light was growing far too bright. Then came the most shocking revelation, the quiet invocation of Protocol Clarion. Buried deep within obscure palace directives, the clause allowed the reigning queen to suspend discretionary spending tied to non-essential public engagements if deemed politically sensitive. This clause, rarely used and even less understood, was allegedly activated to reroute funding earmarked for Catherine's diplomatic engagements. Without those resources, the tour's viability collapsed. Publicly, it was attributed to budget constraints. Privately, it was seen as a calculated checkmate. But why would Camilla, already queen, risk everything to obstruct Catherine's ascent? Camilla's crown weighs heavier than anyone thought. As whispers of Charles's frailty grew, so did her fear of Catherine's spotlight. Those close to her describe a woman consumed by control, obsessing over press coverage, demanding daily briefings on Catherine's moves, and seeing Sophie not as an ally but as a threat. Was this sabotage born of paranoia or desperation? Behind palace doors, the Queen Consort's anxiety had begun to harden into something more dangerous strategy. It wasn't sudden. It crept in with every headline praising Catherine's poise, every poll placing her above Camilla in public favour. As speculation swirled around King Charles's health, whispers of fatigue, fainting spells, and long unannounced absences, Camilla felt the ground beneath her begin to shift. The monarchy, fragile and aging, was already eyeing the next phase of stability, and the image the world was quietly choosing was not hers. Camilla's approval ratings stalled, while Catherine's soared, especially among younger generations. In a monarchy that lives or dies by relevance, those numbers meant everything. Camilla, a symbol of continuity, now found herself fading into the background of a story she thought she'd mastered. Catherine wasn't just admired. She was being viewed as the future of the crown, an image of modern grace wrapped in tradition. It was a threat that no crown could buffer. So Camilla tightened her grip. She began attending more meetings than ever before. She sat in on briefings that traditionally fell outside her purview. She questioned agendas, timelines, and engagement scopes, particularly those tied to Catherine. One of the first signs of serious internal strain was Camilla's alleged clash with the Foreign Office. Typically ceremonial, her role had never required deep involvement in diplomatic planning. But suddenly, Camilla was requesting private updates on state visits, pressuring officials about representation hierarchy, and inserting herself into meetings where her presence was unexpected. Reports emerged of Camilla pushing back against the idea of Catherine representing Britain abroad without a senior royal accompanying her. One aide quoted her as saying, "She doesn't speak for the monarchy. Not alone. Not yet." It was a statement that hinted at fear disguised as protocol. Rather than relying on palace protocol staff, those bound by loyalty and centuries-old systems, Camilla began surrounding herself with private advisors. A new communications team was quietly brought on board. Former political operatives, PR fixers, and loyalty-first consultants began filling her calendar. Their approach was modern, aggressive, and off the royal record. What emerged from this circle was a new structure, referred to by some within the palace as the Mirror Office. Housed within Clarence House, it mimicked Kensington's strategy team. Every initiative Catherine planned was quietly countered. Every major announcement was preempted. The Queen Consort had created her own shadow cabinet within the monarchy. It was within this web of strategic calculation that Camilla allegedly made her most chilling remark. During a private luncheon with two trusted allies, she reportedly called Catherine's tour a prelude to coronation. The phrase wasn't metaphorical, it was a warning. To Camilla, the tour wasn't simply a diplomatic mission, it was a campaign for the throne. Whether or not Catherine saw it that way didn't matter. Camilla did, and from that point forward, stopping it became more than an option, it became a necessity. But Sophie, once seen as neutral, was watching it all unfold. And she had her own reasons to speak now. For months, Sophie carried a secret she never intended to share, yet something shifted perhaps. In Catherine's voice, perhaps in Camilla's glare. With her children watching the monarchy evolve into something unrecognizable, Sophie chose a side. What she reveals not only exposes Camilla's hand, it implicates the institution that enabled her. It began quietly. Sophie had been present at several of the early planning meetings for Catherine's tour, positioned as a supportive observer rather than a decision-maker. She was familiar with the rhythm of royal strategy, the careful choreography behind every international step. But this time, something felt off. Memos would arrive, then disappear. Dates were penciled in, only to be mysteriously withdrawn. On more than one occasion, she noticed abrupt redirections in planning that were never explained. Obstruction orders issued with no clear origin would land on the desks of tour coordinators, delaying decisions and dismantling momentum. It was subtle, but unmistakable, and Sophie, whose instincts had been honed by years of silence, began quietly keeping track. Then came the moment she could no longer deny what was happening. A senior royal aide, anonymous until then, approached her privately. They didn't speak openly at first. It was a hesitant encounter, shadowed by fear. But they handed Sophie a collection of documents, memos, email fragments, and briefing edits that made one thing brutally clear. Catherine's tour had been methodically dismantled from within. The evidence wasn't just troubling, it was damning, and it placed the epicenter of interference at Clarence House. Sophie took the documents. She asked no questions, and for weeks she said nothing, choosing instead to carry the weight of knowing something she couldn't yet confront. Her relationship with Catherine, once grounded in warmth and mutual respect, began to strain under the pressure. They had grown close over the years, bonded by shared duties, long tours, and an unspoken understanding of what it meant to survive the shadows of the monarchy. But as Catherine grew increasingly isolated, Sophie withdrew, torn between loyalty to truth and fear of consequence. Every conversation became measured, every silence heavier. Catherine sensed it but didn't press, and that restraint only deepened Sophie's guilt. She wanted to protect her, but she didn't know how. Inside, Sophie was in turmoil. Guilt gnawed at her. Fear held her back. She had watched what happened to those who dared to challenge the inner sanctum of royal power. The silent exiles, the sudden relocations, the rewriting of their legacy through silence. Her husband, Prince Edward, urged caution. He reminded her that lines, once crossed, could not be undone. But Sophie wasn't thinking about legacy anymore. She was thinking about her daughter, about the kind of institution that would one day shape her world, about what it meant to stand by and do nothing. The breaking point came in Norfolk. A quiet gathering, just the two of them, Catherine and Sophie, away from palace, walls. And Catherine, no longer able to pretend, asked one question. "Do you know?" Sophie didn't respond immediately. She didn't need to. Her eyes said everything. The silence between them fractured. What followed wasn't confrontation. It was confession. And in that moment, Sophie made her choice. She would no longer protect the system by remaining silent. She would no longer carry the burden alone. But the impact of Sophie's revelation didn't stop at Camilla. It triggered a full royal power reckoning. Prince William wasn't supposed to know, not yet. But when word of Camilla's interference reached him, the reaction was volcanic. Courtiers described slammed doors, an emergency Kensington meeting, and a single declaration from William that changed everything. She won't touch Catherine again. In one furious weekend, the heir to the throne began rewriting royal alliances. It began with a single folder, placed on his desk by a senior aide, whose hands reportedly shook as they set it down. Inside were transcripts, internal notes, and flagged correspondences, all pointing to deliberate obstruction of Catherine's Commonwealth tour. For William, this wasn't a political game. This was personal. Catherine hadn't asked for his involvement, hadn't even told him how deep it ran. But the moment he saw what had been done, what had been taken from her, his response was immediate and unforgiving. He ordered a full internal audit of every piece of communication tied to the tour. He wanted names. He wanted timestamps. And most of all, he wanted accountability. No more quiet diplomacy. No more protecting the palace's polished surface. Within hours, Kensington Palace aides were instructed to suspend cooperation with Clarence House-led initiatives. Joint projects were paused, scheduled appearances reconsidered. William, for the first time in years, began to draw a visible line between his household and his stepmother's. What was once a united front, for public appearances now fractured behind the scenes. He didn't inform Clarence House of his audit. He didn't offer a warning. He simply moved, with a calculated intensity that left even his closest advisors scrambling to keep pace. His message was clear. This was no longer about press optics or ceremonial unity. This was about defending his wife from within his own family. Behind palace walls, the fallout was swift. A private confrontation with King Charles reportedly left the monarch visibly shaken. Witnesses say voices were raised, an uncharacteristic break from royal formality. William demanded answers. Charles, caught between his wife and his heir, offered none. Catherine, terrified of the rift widening, pleaded with William not to escalate matters further. But William, whose love had always been matched by fierce protectiveness, made it clear. The line had already been crossed. Escalation wasn't a choice. It was a consequence. He told aides later that week, "The game has changed. Permanently." And with that single sentence, the balance of power within the royal household began to tilt. Plans for a high-profile joint engagement between William and Camilla were abruptly cancelled. No explanation was given, no rescheduling offered. For royal watchers and political insiders alike, the message was unmistakable. The truce was over. For years, William had walked the line between deference and duty, but now, With Catherine's dignity publicly undermined and private sabotage exposed, he abandoned protocol in favor of principle. He wasn't just standing up for his wife, he was challenging the monarchy's tolerance for backroom power plays. Yet while William raged forward, Camilla struck back with a move no one saw coming. Days after Sophie's revelation, a leaked letter found its way into the hands of a trusted royal columnist. Signed in Camilla's sweeping hand, it paints her as the victim of jealous narratives and accuses unnamed royals of weaponizing public sympathy. The backlash was immediate and precisely the chaos she intended to ignite. The timing of the leak wasn't accidental. As headlines across the Commonwealth turned against Clarence House and whispers of internal sabotage consumed the air around Buckingham Palace, Camilla moved swiftly. The letter was calculated, almost surgically crafted to shift the narrative. She did not deny the accusations outright. Instead, she reframed them. In her words, the attacks weren't about truth, but about ambition. She painted herself as the steady hand, the loyal queen consort, enduring a storm of internal envy and youthful overreach. The phrasing was deliberate. Catherine was never named, but every sentence carried her silhouette. The most damning lines described newer members of the royal family, attempting to outrank tradition through personal branding. It was a quiet thunderclap, a veiled accusation that Catherine's rising global popularity was a threat to the monarchy's institutional stability. Camilla's words cloaked aggression in sorrow, portraying herself not as a manipulator but as a protector of heritage. And yet, to those who knew the true weight of her influence, the letter reeked of performance. Still, it worked, at least, temporarily. Media outlets erupted, headlines splintered, online discourse became a battlefield. The response was as immediate as it was divisive. Pro-Camilla voices praised her candor, calling the letter brave and overdue. Longtime defenders of the Queen Consort claimed she had suffered quietly for years, absorbing blame that rightfully belonged elsewhere. On the other side, Catherine's supporters saw through the veil. To them, the letter was a cynical deflection, an act of desperation from a woman trying to extinguish a spotlight she could no longer control. Social media fractured into factions. The press circled like sharks, spinning theories, drawing lines, naming villains. A royal media war was officially underway. King Charles, in the midst of the storm, remained silent. His refusal to issue a statement either in defense of his wife or in defense of his daughter-in-law only deepened the mystery. Some insiders claimed he was advised to remain neutral. Others believed he was paralyzed by the consequences of choosing a side. Regardless of the reason, the absence of his voice spoke volumes. In that silence, the monarchy's fractures became visible to the world. In the days that followed, digital investigators traced the leak back to a private public relations agency with long-standing ties to Camilla's circle. Though the palace denied any formal connection, the trail was too direct to ignore. Emails, billing records, and campaign coordination materials linked the firm to multiple image management operations over the last decade, each one favoring Camilla's narrative at moments of royal tension. The revelation raised serious questions. Had this letter been part of a larger media strategy? Was the chaos it caused part of the plan all along? But even Camilla underestimated the next twist, a secret meeting that would change the future of royal power. In a secluded room at Windsor, away from flashing cameras and swirling headlines, 3 royal women met: Catherine, Sophie, Anne. What was discussed remains unconfirmed, but what followed reshaped the monarchy's internal alliances. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming dignity, truth, and the future of the crown itself. The meeting had been orchestrated in silence, its planning hidden behind routine engagements and vague diary entries. No aides were present inside the room. No press were tipped off. It lasted nearly 3 hours. What began as a conversation rooted in tension gradually became a reckoning of shared truths, a crossing of emotional battlefields. Each woman brought something vital to that table. Sophie, burdened by the guilt of delayed disclosure; Catherine, wounded yet unwavering; and Anne, the monarch's enforcer, cold, shrewd, unshakable. Her presence alone elevated the meeting from a private reconciliation to a potential pivot point for the entire royal structure. Those close to Anne say she listened far more than she spoke, allowing the storm to pass between the other two before delivering a single, sharp verdict. Overheard by a palace staffer outside the door, would come to represent a new internal movement, a shift away from the shadows that had defined royal strategy for decades. Though no official record of the meeting exists, insiders confirm that serious discussions were held about forming a private advisory coalition, one that would operate parallel to, and in some cases outside of, Camilla's sphere of influence. For the first time, the institutional scaffolding beneath the crown was being questioned not by the public, but from within its own bloodline. Perhaps the most courageous moment came from Sophie. With her voice reportedly breaking, she agreed to formally testify if a royal inquiry was launched. That decision sent quiet shockwaves through the palace. Never before had a senior royal volunteered to speak on record against another. But Sophie's commitment was unwavering. She had carried the truth too long. She was prepared to deliver it, word for word, under oath if needed. It was an act of moral defiance, not against the monarchy, but in defense of what it still could become. Catherine, for all her pain, did not seek retaliation. What she offered instead was forgiveness, cautious, conditional, but sincere. Her conditions were simple: transparency, accountability, and the protection of future royal engagements from political interference. She made it clear that this wasn't about reclaiming a tour. It was about safeguarding her voice, her work, and the trust she had spent years earning across the Commonwealth. It wasn't an ultimatum, it was a declaration of boundaries. And Anne, though stoic, did not object. By the time the three women emerged, nothing had been signed, yet everything had changed. Rumours began swirling almost immediately of an upcoming Clarity address, a joint statement or appearance by William and Catherine intended to reset the tone of royal leadership. Some say it will include quiet acknowledgements, others predict symbolic reforms. But what's certain is that the alliance forged in Windsor now holds the power to redefine the monarchy's future path. But the final chapter lies not in what was said, but in what was signed under lock and key, buried deep within Windsor's archives. Behind velvet-lined doors lies a document now whispered about in every palace hallway. Some call it the Clarion Charter. Others believe it's a new succession contingency. Whatever its name, it was signed following Sophie's disclosure, and it rewrites who truly holds influence within the House of Windsor. The war may be ending, but the cost will echo for decades. The Clarion Charter is more than parchment and ink. It's a realignment, a quiet revolution stitched into protocol. Those familiar with its contents describe a set of sweeping internal adjustments that have already shifted the monarchy's centre of gravity. At its heart lies a redefinition of royal travel authority and engagement strategy, effectively transferring long-contested powers away from Clarence House. No longer will ceremonial seniority dictate public representation alone. From now on, it is merit, relevance, and diplomatic rapport that will shape who speaks for the crown and where. And at the centre of that authority stands Catherine, Princess of Wales. For the first time, Catherine is granted full autonomy over Commonwealth engagements, free from interference, free from rerouted permissions. This clause, officials say, was pushed forward after internal audits confirmed attempts to block her previous tour. Her new mandate gives her control not just over travel but over the narrative Britain exports to the world. It is a bold move, one that signals a shift from inherited symbolism to earned leadership. Catherine will no longer need silent approvals or disguised permissions. She will operate with sovereign independence, at least diplomatically. But this charter doesn't just elevate, it restrains. Camilla, once unchecked in her ceremonial functions, now faces a new layer of internal oversight. The document allegedly introduces a formal review process for Queen Consort-led engagements, ensuring they align with broader royal priorities. It's a mechanism that quietly limits her unilateral influence without stripping her public role. Camilla remains queen, but not without conditions. This move, though subtle, is seismic. It places a boundary where none existed before, signaling a recognition that unchecked authority, even within the monarchy, breeds fracture. Perhaps the most intriguing addition is the clause involving Princess Anne. Known for her discretion and duty, Anne is now rumoured to be granted arbitration powers in the event of internal disputes, effectively transforming her into a neutral guardian of equilibrium. This single line within the Charter could prevent future crises before they erupt. It empowers Anne, not just as a figure of respect, but as a mechanism for balance. Her word, should internal battles re-emerge, may now carry institutional weight more than mere opinion. It may be final. Already, whispers suggest the Clarion Charter may quietly replace outdated frameworks like the Sunset Path, a legacy document guiding royal succession roles and ceremonial duties. Unlike its predecessor, the Charter appears future-facing, flexible, adaptive, and deliberately ambiguous. It leaves room for evolution, signaling that the monarchy is bracing for long-term transformation, not just a temporary course correction. And yet, in typical royal fashion, its existence remains officially unacknowledged. No press release, no announcement, just a growing list of decisions and changes that echo its influence. Still, for those watching closely, its fingerprints are everywhere. Joint engagements are being restructured. Clarence House's press operations have been scaled back. New appointments are being made behind closed doors. The monarchy has not declared a shift, but it has already begun living it. As the monarchy recalibrates in silence, the world watches, waiting for the next breach, the next whisper, the next royal war. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.